Today we are at the ACES-IA Summit. We are doing some research on whether or not information architecture affects or does not affect public policy. And today we're talking with John Feffera, who is going to chat with us about the subject. And just to kind of give you a background, John, the idea behind this is to think about how we can get or how we can work through the process, methods and methodologies that we know in information architecture, and how we can use these to do user research to come up with some kind of a data that we can present to policymakers who may, instead of use data to pass policy, may use the politics of emotion. And those policies may or may not be what's needed. So that's kind of what we're getting at with this research. So tell us a little bit about yourself and also what you think about the subject.
Sure. Well, I've been working in information architecture for just shy of 9 years. I started working at a web consultancy in New York City called uxsocial, and then I went to a different web consultancy called Breakaway Solutions, and I worked at Unisys for just shy of 5 years, and I've been with Vanguard for almost 2. And in all these capacities, I've always worked as an information architect with some usability engineering experience thrown into 3 of those 4 jobs.
That's wonderful. And so have you encountered or maybe thought about the idea of using these skills and methods and methodologies that you use in your work as an information architect to see how it may affect the idea of making policy?
Well, I haven't given thought specifically to the subject that we're talking about. I have given thought to the idea of improving democracy through information architecture and through usability, because it seems to me that it is somewhat difficult right now for people to come to understand what their politicians really believe and how aligned they are with the interests of individuals. And I think there's a gap in that. I think that that's certainly an enormous opportunity for the kind of work that we do to have a real impact upon public policy, if only by making people better informed for their voting decisions.
And that's a really good point, because I think what I'm finding in the interviews that I've done in my own research is that emotion has too much to do with the decisions that are made. And if you look at the news today, they're using polling as some kind of a fact.
Sure.
When a poll really is not, it's more of an emotion. So today I feel about the subject this way. And getting around that, I think, is what we hope to do.
Yeah, and I think it's astonishing to some extent how much credence is given to that as being something that represents not just what people's opinions are, but who is actually the person who has greater merit. And so, for example, as you're pointing out with opinion polls, people's opinions can change day to day. They may very much depend upon the mood they're in at the time they're answering. They may give a very different answer upon reflection or something like that after the poll. And I think that that's an enormous problem, because I think that people do confuse that with representation of facts. Very often on news programs you'll hear cited that 63% of people believe such and such, and that doesn't necessarily make that thing true.
That's right.
But people invest that with the expectation that it does confer truth, and I think that's a really big problem. And to some extent, it's the extent to which people don't turn a critical eye toward these types of polls. But it's also invited to some extent. The polling is out there, and the way that it's represented in news media invites people to think that it does represent something more than is actually there. And so the kind of rigor that we have inside of our work, where we do try to bolster the reliability of our studies because it works in our interest, I think is the kind of thing that can be beneficial.
Well, we're hoping to really get to some kind of a deliverable that will, in fact, help us to get to that point. Thank you so much for talking with us today.
I've been happy to.
Thank you.